I don't know about you, but I'm not always the most patient person. One thing that Tammy and I, we had a good trip. We enjoyed our time in D.C. I never had been before. Saw a lot of things that I've always heard of and got to see, and we enjoyed that. But one of my issues in traveling is I don't like waiting. I have a hard. Anyone else like that? Yeah. Does it have a hard time waiting? Yeah. We try to find ways around it, it's just difficult for me, That kind of situation, I just can't imagine, and that's why we talked about when we were in D.C. Could you imagine living here and driving in this? Just could not imagine that, and read this little statistic I thought was quite interesting. People in Los Angeles, California will spend an average of 59 hours of their year sitting, stand still in traffic. 59 hours a year. That's over a work week. Sitting in traffic. Just cannot imagine that. I just can't imagine that. Waiting in line, now this is something that I don't do. Black Friday or whatever they call it now, Bruise Thursday or whatever. I don't know what, I don't know what we're moving into, Concussed Wednesday, Bruise Thursday, Black Friday. I don't know. But I don't do that because I don't like waiting in line. A $4 toaster does not appeal to me. Okay. But people are willing to do that. I don't like waiting in line. The boys always made fun of me, and Tammy's gone sort of to my side a little bit. We went out to eat last night. We had to wait, and I don't wait well. Okay, I'd rather go at 4:00 with the blue hairs than at 6:00 and wait with everyone else. That's me. We eat early when we're out traveling. We eat 4:00. Let's go get, 3:00's even better because sometimes you get to eat off the lunch menu. Okay. So I just really am a person dispositionally against waiting. I tend to be a pretty busy person. A lot of things happen in a day and to wait is wasted time for me. That's just how I feel. So I'm dispositionally, it's a hard thing for me. Okay. In fact, because of that, I have to make waiting a discipline for me and try to make it productive. Maybe there's someone here waiting this morning for something big. Maybe it's a job situation, that you just keep hoping things will get better at work. Maybe you're waiting for a job, waiting for maybe opportunities to happen. Maybe you're waiting because someone's sick, or you're waiting for your own health to improve. Maybe you're on a diet, and you're waiting for those pounds to start falling off. The saddest thing in the world is going on a diet, get on the scales, and you've gained a pound. Tammy and I, we felt like we walked all over D.C., come home, hadn't lost any weight. So maybe you're single, looking for Mr. Right or Miss Right. Or Mrs. Right now. I don't know. But or maybe you're waiting, and this is difficult. Maybe you're waiting for a child or a spouse to sort of get it spiritually. Maybe you want them to kick it in gear and get serious about God. But isn't it one of the hardest things in the world to wait? Of course, you know the saying, good things happen to those who... I know that's the saying, but it's really hard. But as I began thinking about this lesson and studying this lesson, I really began to understand the Bible talks about the importance of waiting. There's a whole lot of scripture about waiting. In fact, I got a little bit overwhelmed. I think somewhere around 28 times there's an imperative to wait mentioned in the Bible. Over 28 times the idea of to wait. And so this morning we're going to sort of look at, at the concept of waiting, but there's a lot of people in Scripture who had to wait. Look at Abraham. God says, I'm going to bless you, 80-year-old Abraham, with generations that are like sands of the seas, stars in the heaven. And what did he have to do? Wait. Look at Joseph in prison, remember, in his situation? Don't remember me when you get back in the Pharaoh's favor, and the guy forgot him, and he waited. Saul refused to wait on the priest to come down there to make sacrifice. He took the job in his own hand, and he made the sacrifice before Samuel could get there. And Samuel says, because of this, God's going to reject you, because Saul refused to wait. David, I didn't realize it until I started studying this lesson. David is all about waiting. He talks about waiting all the time. In fact, when we understand that he's the man who says that this is the man who is after my heart, God says. He's pursuing my heart. He's going after my heart. He wants my heart. And this man talks about waiting on God. Psalms 27, verse 14. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Now, I think that part of waiting on God means I believe that God's in control. That God's providentially in control. Now, that's hard for me at times, but I really work on that God is in control. God is sovereign, and he's in control. But David says it takes courage to wait sometimes. Because waiting means that things aren't happening the way I think they ought to, as quick as they ought to, or the way I think they should. And so I have to wait. And David says, in case you didn't get the first time, he says, wait, I say, on the Lord. It's an imperative that we've got to do this. So this ideal about waiting is not just killing time, but it's waiting with expectation. In fact, we're going to look a little bit at some Hebrew words that sort of are translated into waiting. But it is a time producing expectation to wait. To wait. We very often say, I can't wait. And I know it's some of you kids, years ago we used to get this thing called the Sears Roebuck catalog. That's before we had digital stuff. And kids get the Sears Roebuck catalog and just wear it out. Remember? Wear it out. Now I guess you go online and, say I want this, that, or whatever. But people used to, dog ear, circle the Sears Roebuck catalog, But the idea of producing expectation. Psalms 130, 5 through 6. I'll wait for the Lord. My soul waits. And in his word I do hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for morning. Yes, more than those who watch for the morning. Perhaps David dispositionally got to be called a man after God's own heart because he learned how to wait on God. There was a situation that David could have taken matters in his own hand more than once. There was a place in En-Gedi where Paul was with his men looking for David. David had hidden himself in the cave in En-Gedi. Okay? And so Saul has to go in to go to the bathroom. So Saul goes into the cave. I guess he takes his coat off, sets it aside, and does his business. David's hidden in the cave. He takes out a knife and cuts off the tassel or the end of Saul's coat. Saul leaves out, goes out of the cave, and David more or less comes out and says, what you looking for? Who are you looking for? And of course Saul was looking for David. David says, listen, I could have killed you. Here's proof. Look at your garment. I cut the end of it off. He said, but who am I to raise my hand against the Lord's anointed? You see, David had to wait on God then. You see, he says that more than a person, the watchman waits for morning, is how one translation translated. Those who had the night watch, knew that when morning came, their watch was over with. They longed for that. They eagerly looked forward more. And David says, that's how I wait on God. A couple of different words, kuvah and yakah, are two different Hebrew words translated to wait. And they're really interesting because, remember, Hebrew language doesn't have a lot of words, so words have to do a lot of work and they're translated in context. But kuvah is an interesting word to be translated wait. Because kuvah means to bind together or twist together, almost like one would plait a rope or plait a rope. And so that's what that word can mean. But also this yakah means to wait. But either way, sometimes the translators choose the word hope. And so when you spend time waiting on God with hope, is this sort of this biblical concept of waiting. So quite literally the Hebrew concept of waiting is binding or twisting together time and hope. But I don't know what the future may bring. Can we all say that? I don't know what the future is going to bring. But I know that my God is already in that future, right? God is timeless. So He's already there. I don't know what tomorrow may bring, but I know God's already there. And then I'm going to take what Paul says in Romans chapter 8. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord and called according to His purpose. So I learned to spend time in hope to become this sort of this biblical concept of what true waiting means and how that may be restorative and informative in my own life. So the power of waiting is not simply spending time, but it is in the expectation of what is to come, right? It's just not, well, I've waited forever for you. No. I've been waiting. I'm so happy you're here, right? So isn't that how we would tell somebody that we really love them? That they were worth waiting for? I mean, can you imagine a guy saying he loves a girl and they're going out maybe on a date, and he gets there, and she's not quite ready yet. And so, he waits for her, maybe sit with her parents, whatever. And she comes walking down, maybe walking in the room, and he says, well, I've been waiting forever for you. Or how would that make her feel loved? Or if he says, wow, that's worth waiting for. You see the difference? So it's waiting's not just killing time, but waiting is not just killing time, but it's waiting with expectation of hope. That's how we can get to the point that waiting can be meaningful to us as children of God and as believers. Psalms, again, David, 39 verse 7. And now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you. So when we look at biblical waiting, this concept of waiting that's not just the mundane, everyday kind of wait we have to do. Wait in line, wait in traffic, whatever. But the true type of waiting that can restore us, can reform us, can make us more into God's image, we have to understand that we have to wait and do the right things in waiting. We have to do things we are not to do in waiting. Refraining from doing wrong. And things that happen to us in the process of waiting. It's just something that happens. Now, how many ride a school bus to school or rode a school bus to school? Raise them up. Okay, you know what I'm talking about, okay. Bus duty. How many teachers love bus duty? No one loves it. Bus duty was designed to keep people under control who's waiting, right? That's all it was meant to do, was keep the ones in control who are waiting. And I probably got in a lot of trouble during bus duty. Okay, waiting for the bus. Okay. One, I had a hard time sitting still, had a hard time keeping my mouth shut. I mean, we sat in this gymnasium and when I was at Sycamore School, and they wanted total silence. I never understood that. I mean, we're going to wait for 25 minutes in silence. Do your homework. Never understood that. Always get in trouble and waiting. Okay. So I was thinking about what biblical waiting is sort of like the school bus wait. Things you should do, things you shouldn't do, and things are happening inside of you in the waiting period. So what did you learn to do? You learned self-control by keeping your mouth shut. You learn not to squirm, not to touch your neighbor. You do all these you learn things inside of you during this process, right? And hopefully it made you a better citizen, at least maybe a better bus rider, okay? So Psalms 37, 7 through 9. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Right? This is David again. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way. Don't you don't you hate it when someone cuts line in front of you? Father, cut in line, or that person cuts you off in traffic. Those people who just, David says, let it go. Don't fret over the one who prospers in their way. Because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass, cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes harm. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Isn't that a great promise? If you learn to wait on God, you mind your behavior, you live godly, you don't sin, and you become aware of the process, what's changing within you. Wow, I'm learning to wait. Several years ago, I had a professor in undergraduates, and we had a whole, back when we took semesters, instead of, when we took quarters instead of semesters, we took a lot more courses than students take now. But I had a whole course in nothing but relaxation therapy. It was a whole course in relaxation therapy. And so we learned all these relaxation therapy techniques and stuff that was in undergrad school. But I remember my professor saying, he says, I used to hate to wait in line. He professed that. He said, it would make me impatient. It would make me upset. He says, but then I began practicing relaxation techniques. And he says, so I knew that was my cue that was going to make me anxious to wait in line. And so I began practicing these techniques. I would, deep breathe. I would do differential relaxation. I would do all these different techniques. He says, now it actually calms me to wait in line. What? You get calmed down by waiting? He said, oh, yeah, man, no problem. He just calms me down to wait in line. It's like, wow, I've got all this time to chill. Now, that's what a person can do with their mind and their thinking. Imagine what will happen if we can begin giving our lives to God and to wait patiently on Him. David says, listen, you get the whole earth. You win in the end game if you do it that way. So biblical waiting should not lead to meanness or misbehavior. It's like school bus waiting. Shouldn't lead to that. Shouldn't bring out the anger in you. Well, they got a lot ahead of me, or they're getting it before I am God, Should not covet what other people have. Does not envy, But sometimes we need to learn to wait. And biblical waiting is filled with promises. Don't you love this one? Isaiah 40:31. But those who wait on the Lord, what? He shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And the song that sometimes we sing, what does it say? Teach us, Lord, to wait. You see, but wait's not something I just give you. You have to have it learned through experience. You have to do it through experience. Poor Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. I said if there was ever an example of a prophet who needed Prozac, it was Jeremiah. Okay, but then he wouldn't have anything to say to us probably, because he wouldn't be depressed anymore. The Lord is good to those who wait for Him. To the soul who seeks Him, it is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Waiting produces good things. Say that with me. Waiting produces good things. We need to just prepare ourselves for it. We need to let waiting have its fruit in our life. It's past garden season for the most part now. Maybe some few fall gardens out there, but the gardener understands waiting. The ground gets warm in the springtime. They go out there and till it up, and they lay off a row, and they may plant a row of beans, and they cover it with dirt. They go out the next morning. They don't see anything. And what happens is they start digging, looking for that bean. They're going to disrupt the process. They have to wait on the bean to sprout. And then they've got to wait for it to come to the ground. And then they've got to wait for it to grow up a little bit. And they've got to wait for it to bloom. And they've got to wait. I think people who fish are the most optimistic people in the world. I say I like to fish. I never fish, but I say I like to. I think I like the ideal of fishing more than the process of doing it. Of course, I like to eat the fish too. So, but I think they have to be the most optimistic because they do this. They go and go and go and go and get very little return on their investment of time, right? But there's discipline in it. And there's something good about it. I think that maybe that's why Jesus chose, guess what? Fishermen to be apostles. They had some clue about waiting. Remember the time that Jesus said, hey, have you caught any fish? No, none tonight. He said, put it on the other side. But none tonight's probably usual experience for them. Well, they're not biting tonight. They're not running tonight. They're using nets. They're not running tonight. Waiting in itself is a spiritual discipline. We talk about prayer, we talk about meditation, we talk about, prayer. But waiting in and of itself is a spiritual discipline. So what are you waiting for? Now, Brother Matthew read from the Gospel of Matthew a few moments ago. Matthew 25, Jesus told the story about waiting. You know the story. It's a wedding. Everybody got their invitations. Oh, it's an exciting event. Everybody gets their invitation. And there's 10 girls in the community, and they weren't married. And girls aren't married like to go to weddings. I don't know if they had brides magazines back then, probably not, but whatever was going on, they get excited. Oh, they have been invited to the wedding. There may be some single guys there, I don't know, but they were excited about the wedding, and it was weddings were much more protracted back then. They had big feasts. Sometimes they would go on for days. I mean, it was not quite like we sort of get through them in an hour or two today. It was a big thing. And they knew it was a big thing. And they went and, I'm sure the girls probably, they had their hair fixed up and, whatever, how they made themselves pretty back then, probably had a nice outfit on and they're getting ready and the wedding feast was going to be something else. I mean, it's not little cake and mint. It was, roasted lamb and courses of food, it was some sight to behold. And they didn't have TV and stuff like that back then to entertain themselves. So it's a big thing to do, get invited to the wedding. And so there was 10 of them. 5 of them said, hey, they got everything ready. And they thought, hey, it's going to get dark out. I need some light. And so they brought their lamp. And they said, well, I don't know how long it's going to take. A good bridegroom could be delayed in coming because typically the bridegroom would come back to the village of the bride, and then they would have the wedding, and then he would take her back home to his people, and they'd go live with his family. So it could be a while before he got here. So they went and got oil. They got extra oil. It'd be equivalent to getting your flashlight and some extra Duracells just in case. So they got extra. But the other girls were just so caught up with getting ready, for the thing that they didn't prepare fully. They brought their lamps and some oil, but not enough. And then the evening wore on. It did get dark. They lit their lamps and they're waiting. I can imagine them not wanting to sit down because they don't want to wrinkle the dress or whatever. They were getting tired, waiting, fussing. And finally, the bridegroom's coming. Oh, and they begin getting ready. They got their lamps, and then it's flickering a little. And you don't want to. Part of the lamp experience was bringing more light to the assembly, and so the 5 prepared girls, they just filled their little lamps up, and the 5 unprepared girls didn't have. And they says, well, give us some of yours. Well, we can't give you ours because we give ours. They didn't know our lamps would go out. And you better go see if there's any place open tonight. So finally they find the 7-Eleven open or whatever it is, that's there, something like that. The guy down the street sells oil. So they get some more oil and they come back. But by that point in time, the door's closed. They waited, but not prepared to wait. They waited in what they thought was a reasonable amount of time. So they knock at the door, but they said, no one else is in. And Jesus uses this story to say, hey, this is what it means to wait on me. Is that you watch, you listen, you're attentive, you're ready for the crowd, the bridegroom's coming, but you've got to be prepared. You've got to practice some biblical waiting. You've got to be mindful of the things you should do during that period of time and the things you should avoid doing that time and the process that's happening within you. Remember those activities. The things you're avoiding doing, the things you are doing, the good things, and that process that's happening within you. Now Jesus gives this pretty sober statement. He says, watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour which the Son of Man is coming. Pretty ominous what Jesus says. You don't know. You better be waiting. You better be watching. And you better be prepared. So we know that when you put preparation with waiting, like the 5 smart girls did, preparation and waiting led to joy. They got to go in the bridegroom's feast. Oh man, it was just, I don't know if they had a chocolate fountain or whatever. Whatever it was just big. And they had joy. You see, the right preparation makes waiting worth the effort. Without the right preparation, it leads to disappointment and sadness. So, as we bring this to an end this morning, are you waiting in the Lord for the Lord? If you're waiting in the Lord, you confess Jesus your Savior, you've been buried with Him in baptism, you're living your life faithful, you're doing what you should do and avoiding what you shouldn't do, and you're dealing with a process of this spiritual development process, what's happening in you and about you and to you in the waiting process, then you have joy to look forward to. Now, if you're waiting for the Lord but not in the Lord, you're not prepared. So the challenge you have this morning is to make sure you leave here in the Lord, waiting for the Lord. And as this week rolls by, I guarantee you, for the most of us, we're going to have to wait on something this week. We're going to have to wait on something. Maybe this afternoon. Why don't I begin taking those moments of frustration on waiting and begin to say, God, give me this moment to let me focus on you. God, I'm not the Bible student I ought to be. I don't study and reflect on your word. But teach me, Lord, this week to, when I have to wait, let me reflect on you. Let me start memorizing a verse. Let me stick something in my pocket, something in my purse to pull it out and read. Let me take those waiting room opportunities. Instead of being frustrated about how long the doctor's taking or the dentist is taking or the driver testing or whatever, let me learn to reclaim waiting for you. Let you work in me in the events of my life. If you're here this morning and we can assist you in preparing for your wait for the Lord, we would love to do that. I'd love to bust the water right open today with someone obeying the gospel this morning. If you're here today to do that, we'd love to assist you. Or you need prayer this morning on your behalf, won't you come as we stand and sing song Ronnie's picked out for us.